Okay guys, so before we begin our math lesson today, go ahead and get out your customary conversions chart that was in your math packet from Monday. This is the anchor chart that has every single type of measurement, of customary measurement. It has length, capacity, weight, and time on it. So you have all of the conversions all in one place. Go ahead and get that out. We're going to go over it really quick. Remember, you need to be studying it because you may not use any conversion charts on your test. You do have to remember them. Again, I've said this every single day in my morning meeting, which some of you have watched, some of you have not, and you're really missing out. Those of you who have watched it know why. Make sure that you are studying these. I've said it every day, and I've said it a couple times in math. You may not use a conversion chart on your test. You do have to remember it. If you use a conversion chart, that would be considered cheating. You do have to remember it. So let's go over this really quick. Let's look at length first. We know that inches are the smallest. 1 foot equals 12 inches. They are the same size. 1 yard equals 3 feet, and 1 mile equals 5,280 feet. Make sure that you remember that. 1 foot is the same as 12 inches. 1 yard is the same as 3 feet. 1 mile is the same as 5,280 feet. Now let's look at capacity. Again, make sure that you are memorizing these. 1 cup is equal to 8 fluid ounces. Remember, 8 fluid ounces are the smallest. 1 pint is equal to 2 cups, 1 quart is equal to 2 pints, and 1 gallon is equal to 4 quarts. Now for the weight, ounces are the smallest. 1 pound is equal to 16 ounces. Remember, ounces and fluid ounces are different. Fluid ounces are a unit of capacity, which means how much liquid can something hold. Ounces is weight. How much does something weigh? Or how heavy or light is an object. And then 1 ton equals 2,000 pounds. Okay, now time. 1 minute equals 60 seconds. Seconds are the smallest unit, so there are no units inside a second. 1 minute is equal to 60 seconds. 1 hour is equal to 60 minutes. 1 day is equal to 24 hours. 1 week is equal to 7 days. 1 month is about 30 days, but you really won't be doing any conversions between days and months or months and days, but just so you know. 1 year is 365 days, except for leap years, but you're really only going to need to worry about non-leap years when you get to your test, potentially. 1 year equals 52 weeks, and 1 year also equals 12 months. Remember? If you are going from a big unit to a small unit, you multiply. So for example, 5 gallons equals how many quarts? Well, we take the 5 gallons, we multiply it by the number of quarts in a gallon, which is 4. So 5 gallons is the same as 20 quarts. If you are going from a small unit to a big unit, you divide. So 36 inches is equal to how many yards? Inches are smaller than yards. Also, they are not next to each other on that chart. So first, we have to go to feet, then we can go to yards. So we start with 36 inches and divide by the number of inches in a foot. That equals 3, so that's how many feet are in 36 inches. Then we divide those 3 feet by the number of feet in a yard, which equals 1. So 36 inches is equal to 1 yard. And remember, if you see blank ounces equals 9 pounds, it's the exact same thing as 9 pounds equals blank ounces. It's like the commutative property. They just switch the places. So make sure that you are using this to help you study and that you are memorizing it because, again, you cannot use a conversion chart on your test. You must remember these. It's been the same every single year. I've been saying it since we started. Since the very first conversion lesson on length, I've been saying you must memorize these. Okay, let's go ahead, now that we've gone over this, let's go ahead and get to our book where we are going to work with multi-step problems, but this time one of these steps will always be conversion. Okay guys, so go ahead and open to page 749 in your textbook. And let's do example 1. Remember, we're doing multi-step problems, but in these problems, one step is going to be converting. So example 1, read in your head while I read out loud. The blue trail at the park is 3/4 of a mile long. The red trail is 1 1/4 miles long. Stella wants to hike both trails. How many feet will she hike in all? So we know one trail is 3/4 of a mile, the other one is 1 1/4 of a mile. Stella's going to hike both, so we want to figure out how many miles that is. Then it's asking how many feet. So step one is we have to find the total number of miles, because we can't find feet until we know how many miles it is. So that means we're going to add 1 1/4 plus 3/4. Remember, when we're adding or subtracting mixed numbers, we have to first convert that mixed number into a improper fraction. So we're going to ignore this right here, and then we're going to go ahead and convert 1 1/4 into a mixed number. So go ahead, you have some space right here. We start with the denominator. We multiply it by the whole number. 4 times 1 equals 4. Then we add the numerator, which is 1. 4 plus 1 equals 5. So that is our new numerator. Remember, when we're converting mixed numbers, we start with the denominator. We multiply by the whole number. Then we add the numerator to that answer, and that gives us our new numerator. So our new numerator is 5. Our denominator stays the same. Now we're just going to add, we do not have to convert 3/4 into an improper fraction because it's just a regular fraction. We can just leave it how it is. So now we have 5/4 plus 3/4. Well, we know when we're adding like fractions, we add the numerators. 5 plus 3 equals 8. The denominator stays the same. But now we have a mixed number. We have an improper fraction, so we can't leave it like that. So we divide the numerator by the denominator. 4 goes into 8 2 times. 2 times 4 equals 8. 8 minus 8 is 0, which means that 8 divided by 4 is 2. Remember to get the fraction, the mixed number, from the division. The quotient without the remainder is the whole number. The remainder is the numerator, and the denominator is the divisor. However, if your remainder is 0, that means you just have a whole number. So that means altogether, Stella will hike 2 miles. We can also use a number line, but that's going to be a lot of extra time that you don't need to do. So all you need to do is add the miles. Remember, you do have to turn mixed numbers into improper fractions, and then you have to turn improper fractions back into mixed numbers. And we discovered that Stella will hike 2 miles. Well, we're not quite done yet because the question is asking how many feet will she hike in all. We know she's hiking 2 miles, but that doesn't tell us how many feet she's hiking. So what that means is we are trying to find, make sure that you write this, 2 miles equals how many feet? Well, miles are larger than feet, so we know we're multiplying. They are right next to each other on the chart. There are yards between them, but our conversion chart tells us exactly how many feet are in a mile, so we don't have to go to yards first. So we're going to start with what we know, which is 2 miles. Then we're going to multiply it by the number of feet in a mile, which we know from our chart is 5,280. And that answer will give us the number of feet. However, this is not a basic fact, nor is it one you can use basic facts and patterns, nor is it a problem that needs the identity property of multiplication. So we need to go ahead and solve it to the side. Now, I know they have it right here for you, but that doesn't really help you. Just looking at it doesn't help you. We need to work it out. So go ahead and write it to the side. We're saying 5,280 times 2. 2 times 0 is 0. 2 times 8 is 16. We have to regroup that 1 to the hundredths place. 2 times 2 is 4. Plus 1 is 5. Bring down our comma. 2 times 5 is 10. So that means 5,280 times 2 is 10,560, which means that 2 miles is equal to 10,560 feet. So that means Stella will hike 10,560 feet in all. So remember, these types of problems, you have to figure out, you're going to be doing an operation with the measurements first. You're going to be taking two or more measurements, putting them together or taking them apart or doing something to them, and then you're going to be converting. Let's go ahead and move on to number 2. Let's do example 2 so we can see, we can try it again. Okay, so you should have turned the page, and now go ahead and put your finger or pencil on example 2 and read in your head while I read out loud. Dominic weighed an apple and a watermelon. The apple weighed 5 ounces. The watermelon weighed 20 pounds. How many more ounces did the watermelon weigh than the apple? Okay, so again, we're going to solve this problem just like we have every time we've done a multi-step problem lesson. We're going to figure out what we know, and then we're going to look for words that tell us what operation to do. Well, we know the apple weighed 5 ounces. We know the watermelon weighed 20 pounds. We see the words, how many more, in our question, which tells us that we are going to be doing subtraction. Remember, if you see those words, how many more, that usually means you're trying to find a difference between two numbers, which means you are going to subtract. Now we know we can't say 5 ounces minus 20 pounds, so that means we have to say 20 pounds minus 5 ounces. However, we can't do that. We can't take ounces away from pounds, so that means we have to put them both in the same unit. I have to make them both pounds, or I have to make them both ounces. Well, I'm obviously not going to turn the 5 ounces into pounds because that wouldn't even be a full pound. I would have a difficult fraction that I'd have to subtract from a whole number. So, and like I said with those comparison problems, it's always easiest to take the larger, well, not always, but it's usually easiest to take the larger measurement, the larger unit, and convert it to the smaller unit. So what we're going to do first is we're going to figure out how many ounces are in 2 pounds. Well, pounds are bigger than ounces, and they're right next to each other on the chart. So that means I can multiply, and I can do it in one step because I don't have to go from pounds to another unit before I get to ounces. Now I always start with what I know, which is 20 pounds, and then I'm going to multiply it by the number of ounces in a pound, which is 16. So I'm trying to see 20 times 16 equals what? Well, I'll go ahead and set it up and down. So even though it's already written, go ahead and write over it because that muscle memory will help you to remember. And I know that when I'm doing double-digit multiplication, step 1 is to take the whole top number, which is 20, and multiply it by the value of the digit in the ones place. So 20 times 6. Well, 6 times 0 is 0, and then 6 times 2 is 12. So that means my first partial product is 120. Now step 2 is to take the whole top number and multiply it by the value of the digit in the tens place, which is 10. Well, now I can use basic facts and patterns. The basic fact is 2 times 1, which is 2. There are 2 zeros at the end of my products, so I'm going to put 2 zeros at the end of my factor. I'm sorry, there are 2 zeros at the end of my factor, so I'm going to put 2 zeros at the end of my product. And now I have the partial product of 200, so now I'm going to add my partial products. 0 plus 0 is 0, 2 plus 0 is 2, and 1 plus 2 is 3. So that means 20 pounds is equivalent to 320 ounces, which means the watermelon weighed 320 pounds. I'm sorry, which means the watermelon weighs 320 ounces. Sorry, not pounds. That would be a massive, massive watermelon. Now we can do that subtraction. We couldn't do 20 pounds minus 5 ounces, but we can do 320 ounces which is exactly the same as 20 pounds, we found out here, and then we can take away 5 ounces. We do have to do some regrouping, but since we only have a 1 digit, we can just count backwards. So remember, when we subtract, we're going to count backwards, so we're going to start at 320, and we're going to go back 5. 320, 319, 318, 317, oops, I messed up. I'm sorry. No, 320, then take away 1, 319, 318, 317, 316, and 315. So that means 320 ounces minus 5 ounces is 315 ounces. So that means the watermelon weighed 315 ounces more than the apple. So, again, all you're doing in these problems is you're looking for information you know. Then you're looking for words or phrases that tell you what operation you're doing. Now, sometimes you'll have to do the converting first, like in this problem, where we had what we knew was in 2 different units. We can't do that, so we had to change them into the same unit, so we had to do the converting first, and then we did the operation. Or it could be like example 1, where it gives us the information in the same unit, but the question is asking for another unit. So we did the operation first, then we did the converting. You might come across either one. Let's go ahead and go to the guided practice, and we'll work out another problem. Okay guys, so go ahead and look at number 1 on the guided practice. The question says, Stan has 4 pints of milk. Gianna has twice as much milk as Stan. How many fluid ounces of milk does Gianna have? So, we know that Stan has 4 pints. We know that Gianna has twice as much. And then we're trying to find the fluid ounces. Well, the things that we know, 4 pints and then twice as much, are in the same unit. Because all we're doing, twice as much, means she has more. So, 4 pints, to figure out how many pints Gianna has, we take Stan's 4 pints and multiply it by 2. Well, 4 times 2 equals 8. So that means Gianna has 8 pints of milk. Now, let's see. Okay, I'm sorry. Now, we know that she has 8 pints of milk. So that's step 1. Step 2 is, the question is asking how many fluid ounces she has, not how many pints. So the answer is not 8. So now we just have to convert the 8 pints into ounces. Well, we know from our conversion chart that 1 pint is the same as 2 cups, and 1 cup is the same as 8 fluid ounces. So if 1 cup is the same as 8 fluid ounces, that means 2 cups is the same as 16 fluid ounces, because 8 times 2 is 16. So that means there are 2 cups or 16 ounces in 1 pint. So that means we're taking Gianna's 8 pints and we're multiplying by the number of fluid ounces in a pint, which is 16. That is not a basic fact, or you can't use basic facts and patterns, so we're going to solve it to the side. 16 times 8, well, 8 times 6 is 48. 8 times 1 is 8, plus 4 is 12. So 8 pints times 16 equals 128 fluid ounces. So there are 128 fluid ounces in 8 pints, which means that Gianna has 128 fluid ounces of milk. Now normally, that's a lot of doing math in your head, so there's a lot of chances for silly mistakes. So normally, what would be a better option, a better way to make sure that you are correct, is for number 1, you know that Gianna has 8 pints of milk, and you're trying to figure out how many fluid ounces that is. Well, on our chart, we know that the cups come between pints and fluid ounces. So first, we have to see 8 pints, how many cups that is. Well, pints are bigger than cups, so we know we're multiplying. We start with what we know, which is 8 pints, and then we multiply by the number of cups in a pint, which is 2. 8 times 2 is 16. Now, we know that 8 pints equals 16 cups, but we still have to get to fluid ounces. So now, 16 cups equals how many fluid ounces? Well, cups are bigger than fluid ounces, so we're going to multiply. We start with what we know, which is 16. Multiply it by the number of fluid ounces in a cup, which is 8. So 16 times 8, we did solve it already right here, is 128. So that means there are 128 fluid ounces in 16 cups. There are 16 cups in 8 pints. So that means there are 128 fluid ounces in 8 pints. Now that way we'll make sure that you don't make any silly mistakes and you don't accidentally multiply by an incorrect number here. This is the preferable way, and this is how you must do it from now on. You must, if you are trying to get from one unit to another one, but there's a unit in between, like here you're trying to get from pints to fluid ounces, but cups come between in size, you do have to go to that one in between. Okay, now number 2. Molly went to her grandma's house for 16 hours last weekend. This was this, meaning 16 hours, was 4 times longer than the time she spent at her grandma's this weekend. How many minutes was Molly at her grandma's house this weekend? So what we're going to do is we're going to write an equation. Well, first, we know that last weekend she spent 16 hours at her grandma's house. 16 hours is 4 times longer than what she spent this weekend. So that doesn't mean that we're multiplying by 4, because we're already saying this sentence says that she spent a longer time at her grandma's house last weekend than this weekend. So if we multiplied by 4, we'd get a larger number than 16 hours. We know that can't be true. So if 16 is 4 times longer than our next number, that means we have to divide by 4. Because we're saying the number of hours this weekend times 4 equals 16. Well, we know 16 divided by 4 is 4 hours. So that's step 1. 4 hours is how long Molly spent at her grandma's house this weekend. Now, we just have to convert that 4 hours, just keep wanting to put S, but you don't have to, into minutes. Because the question says how many minutes. So 4 hours equals how many minutes? Well, hours are bigger than minutes, so we know we're going to multiply. We're going to start with what we know, which is 4. We're going to multiply by the number of minutes in an hour, which is 60. And now we have 4 times 60. This can be solved using basic facts and patterns. The basic fact is 4 times 6, which is 24. There's 1 0 at the end of the factor, so we put 1 0 at the end of the product. So we know that 4 hours is equal to 240 minutes. So Molly spent 240 minutes at her grandma's this weekend. So remember, this is where we got a little confused. This is where things could become confusing when we did this lesson before. 4 times longer, that word 4 times longer makes you think you have to multiply. But because it's saying that the number that came before is 4 times longer, that means the number that comes after is going to be smaller. In order to get a smaller number when you have the word times, because remember, times doesn't always mean multiplication. It can mean multiplication or division. In this case, it means division because this was 4 times longer, means that 16 hours is 4 times longer than how much she spent this weekend, which is 4. Well, we know 16 is 4 times longer because 4 times 4 equals 16. So pay attention to that to make sure that you are not multiplying. You just have to read the question slowly and carefully, and you need to make sure that you are reading it correctly. Read it slowly, read it carefully, make sure, are you trying to get a bigger number or are you trying to get a smaller number? Always check for that. Okay, so let's see. We'll go ahead and do number 3 together, but then the rest you're going to do on your own. So go ahead and turn to the next page, and we'll do number 3 together. Okay, so let's look at number 3 and read the problem in your head while I read out loud. Jaden read to his little sister for 10 minutes on Saturday and 12 minutes on Sunday. How many seconds did he read to her on Saturday and Sunday? Okay, so what we know? We know 10 minutes and we know 12 minutes. Those are both in the same unit. Those both have the same unit, minutes. So that means we can go ahead and figure out what operation we're going to do first before we have to convert. So we're trying to figure out, he read 10 minutes on Saturday, 12 minutes on Sunday. The question is asking how many seconds he read to her on Saturday and Sunday. So the fact that we're trying to figure out how long he read on Saturday and Sunday means that we're going to take 10 minutes and add it to 12 minutes. But then the question says how many seconds did he read? So after we add 10 and 12 minutes, we have to figure out how many seconds, which means we have to convert it. Well, we know that minutes are bigger than seconds, so we're going to multiply. We're going to multiply 10, whatever 10 plus 12 is, by 60, because that's the number of seconds in a minute. And whatever that answer is the answer to our question, how many seconds did he read to her on Saturday and Sunday? So first we have to circle what to do to solve this problem. Are we going to add 10 and 12 and then multiply by 60? Are we going to add 10 and 12 and then multiply by 30? Are we going to add 10 and 12 and then divide by 60? Or are we going to add 10 and 12 and then subtract by 60? Well, we've already talked about it. And we're going to add 10 minutes and 12 minutes because that will tell us the total number of minutes he read on Saturday and Sunday. Then we have to multiply by 60 in order to convert the minutes into seconds because there are minutes are bigger than seconds, big to small, you multiply, and there are 60 seconds in a minute. So what that is going to look like is this, because we have to solve it. So go ahead and show your work to the side. Step 1 is to add 10 minutes and 12 minutes. Well, we can easily do that by just going from place to place. 0 plus 2 is 2. 1 plus 1 is 2. So that means in all he read for 22 minutes. Step 2 is we have to figure out, okay, 22 minutes equals how many seconds? Well, minutes and seconds are right next to each other, and minutes are larger than seconds, so that means we're going to multiply in one step. We start with what we know, which is 22 minutes. Then we multiply by the number of seconds in a minute, which is 60. And now we're going to solve. You can't use basic facts. You can use some patterns, but let's go ahead and set it up to the side. I know that my answer is going to have a 0 at the end, so I'm going to go ahead and put that 0 at the end, and now I'm just going to multiply 22 times 6, because I know my answer is going to be 22 times 6 with a 0 at the end. So 6 times 2 is 12, 6 times 2 is 12, plus 1 is 13, I put that before my 0. So now I know that Jaden read to his little sister for 1,620 seconds on Saturday and Sunday. Okay, so go ahead. You can do this. You can do it. All you have to do is just think about, what do I know? What is it asking for? Do I need to convert first? Are my units different? Like in example 2 where we had ounces and pounds? Or are my units the same, but the question is asking for a different unit? So make sure, look, do you need to solve it first? Do you need to do an operation first, or do you need to convert first? What operation do you have to do? So go ahead, work on that. Let's see, number 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 are going to be just like the guided practice and the examples. You just have to figure out which unit, which operation you're doing, and which order you're doing the operations, or converting. Are you converting first and then doing an operation, or are you doing an operation first and then converting? Numbers 9 and 10 are those reasoning and critical thinking questions. That means for reasoning, you're trying to figure out how to solve a brand new problem based on what you know, or what went wrong with a problem based on what you know. And then critical thinking is when you're taking what you already know, thinking about what you learned today, putting it together to create a new answer in words. Go ahead and look at the homework. Numbers 1 through 3, you will solve like the guided and like the guided practice and the examples. Make sure that you follow those directions. Make sure that you have a separate sheet of paper. You need a separate sheet of paper for the guided practice, for the independent practice, because you don't have enough room on the back. You do not have enough room to solve numbers 5, 6, 7, and 8 on the back. So you need one sheet of paper for the independent practice, and then you need another sheet of paper for the homework. Go ahead and write yourself that note right now. You need a separate sheet of paper for the homework. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 all have to be solved on an extra sheet of paper. You are solving 1 through 9. You need to use a separate sheet of paper to solve all those. You are solving them the same way that we did the guided practice and the examples. You just have to figure out which operation you're doing and whether you are doing the operation first or converting first. So you may use your conversion charts for your homework. Make sure that you are also studying and memorizing those. And then if you have any questions about today's math lesson, go ahead and reach out to me later today between 1 and 5.